Okay, now we have Giselle full act. Now this one is a bit of a challenge. There are a lot of activations, I think 7 or 8, and none of them are particularly conventional. So it might take a while to go through this, and forgive me if I mess anything up, because even right now it can be hard to remember exactly what's going on, especially when the song itself changes constantly. But anyway, I'll try and be as quick as possible, but it probably will end up being about 10 minutes. So yeah, first activation, we got nothing really going on until the activation itself. So we get 3 phrases, and then after this third phrase we have some ascending sort of pattern things. But the way I would remember this is I would wait for this red yellow trill to come up. It's pretty slow. It's like there's one earlier on, but that's in a phrase anyway, so there's no way you would get it confused. And obviously there's this one, but you don't even have enough star power. But this slowish red yellow trill, and we're just waiting for this ascending chord. That's all it is. So there's a gap from like not in time, but obviously there's no red note, so it's sort of obvious and easy to identify where this chord begins. So we can see it coming from a mile away and just activate on it. And that's how to do the first act, that's how to remember it. This overlap is no problem at all, and ideally we will squeeze in this note and be mostly optimal. There is a whammy there, so I don't think I would end up getting this chord probably. But yeah, first act, done. Second activation, also in a bit of a weird spot, maybe a little bit difficult to remember. So we get 2 phrases, both of them have a bit of whammy. Now, to distinguish this, we got these hooks, these 2 quick hooks, and then it goes into these chord ascending bit basically. This is all taps, so we don't need to worry about strums or anything here, at least. So yeah, 2 fast hooks, you can't miss them, and just the red-blue chord. That's it. It's the second chord that shows up, so there aren't like a million chords, and you're just waiting for this one to show up. It's the second chord, so it's kind of, once again, not in an obvious spot, not on a measure or anything, but it's easy enough to tell exactly where it is. And yes, second activation ideally will end after all this chord pattern stuff, and this is a really valuable activation. It's got 3 note chords and obviously all of this stuff. A lot of the activations are pretty valuable. I mean, even this one is. This next activation is the most valuable in this song. The good thing about this one is we don't need to worry about whammy because we get 4 phrases. So yeah, just hit the notes. These phrases aren't even free. Like, you see this? I think this is a fast lick. This one has a blue to red, yellow, blue chord, which you can overstrum or miss if you anchoring every note beneath it, and this is just a chord bit. But anyway, the activation itself, this yellow blue trail is relatively quick, and you see we want to activate just before the end of it, not here. If we activate on measure 100, we will overlap this phrase, which spells disaster for us, because, you know, there's just, if we basically waste the entire thing, notes don't come in for another measure and a half. So yeah, this is a vital non-overlap, and also a vital phrase, vital activation, because I mean it's all chords and it's fast chord trills. You see, we rock it up from 372 to 500,000. So this is worth like 70,000. If you don't activate here, you're down by that much. So since this drill is pretty quick, you would think that you'd want to tap it, and I think I tried to tap like the first half of it and then start one-handing, because it does get a little bit slower. 113 BPM, it's 1 BPM, it's not that much. But yeah, tap as much as I could and then bring my hand down and activate somewhere near the end. I didn't activate for this note specifically because it's a long trill and it's hard to tell exactly where this note is. So somewhere around here, ideally it would be right here, because we can notice the the slowdown between the blue and the yellow. But if you activate on the blue once again, you're risking overlapping. So yeah, just somewhere near the end, before it's too late, and then we get the vast majority of all this. We end up maybe a note or two shy, but still getting tons of points. Maybe the most valuable activation in any song, this one right here. Don't quote me on that, but I would not be surprised. So yeah, that activation, very important. And nothing is quite as important as that. Maybe the last act is really important, but these next acts are generally just you get 2 phrases and activate. So boosh, boosh, no whammy. This one's easy to remember. There's a long break after this green red sustain chord. So yeah, just after that grace note, boosh, straight away. Don't want to activate any later than that because we don't want to overlap here. And there's pretty much it's gonna look close, but I don't think there's much of a chance of overlapping this phrase. Like even if you squeeze ridiculous amounts, because this path has no early whammy, and there's no whammy in these phrases, so I'm pretty sure it's impossible to overlap if you activate right here. So yeah, simple enough act. Next one is a 2-phrase instant, so it can't really, you just need to know when the phrase is coming up, and you just remember that it's in the acoustic guitar part. I think it starts right here, gets acoustic, and the phrase is right here, or something like that. Maybe it's not exactly there, but I'm pretty sure this is an acoustic guitar part. So immediate act, nothing to remember, no overlap, no nothing. Simple. Another 2 phrases, 1 whammy there in an easy spot. Maybe a bit more difficult to remember the other 2. It turns, after we get this phrase right here, it turns to a slow like waltz part or something like that, and it's like just piano monotone. So we just need to remember it's after 2 measures, and we can remember that it's after this double green here, and I wouldn't strum the second green even though they're both taps. I don't know, just made it less likely to overstrum right there, and because I'm focusing on the activation, it's just one less thing to think about. And so yeah, we activate on this orange note, which is on a measure, and it is vital that we remember about this activation, like when it's coming up, because once again it's very possible to overlap this phrase, which is something we don't want to do. It's not the worst overlap in the world, because our next activation gets 4 phrases, so you'd end up with 3, and you get a bit of extra army that you wouldn't get, so you'd end up with like 80% bar, but still the slash tactic is valuable, so we really don't want to miss this activation. Right there, orange note after the only part where it's 2 greens in a row. Okay, and as I said, the final activation we get 4, so we don't need to worry about whammying this, not that it's a hard whammy. And the way to remember this, it goes back to the dramatic, like, I don't really know what to call it, but this chord bit. And then, so after we get the phrase, we get this like string of 16ths, and we're just waiting for this to end to go back into this part, and it's the second time this happens. So we see the red, yellow, and then we get ready to activate, boosh, and we overlap, not a tight overlap, and ideally end on the very last note of the song, which is a bit rare, but that's pretty cool. And yeah, that is the path for Giselle. A mouthful. I feel like I can't speak anymore after doing that. But yeah, this song is pretty mental in both notes and in path. So yeah, we'll get onto the notes now, and there's a lot to say there as well. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the notes of Giselle, and oh my gosh, this song, there's just so much going on in every aspect. The path is mad, the notes, I could talk about like almost any section in it. So yeah, well, I'll just point out the stuff that I feel is necessary. As far as like hitting certain chords and like positions for all of that, that's going to be a bit unnecessary to go into too much detail. So I'll just talk about those things that were problem spots for me, and maybe some of the parts that weren't problem spots, but could easily impose a threat, if you will, to the FC. So nothing so bad until, and these sections don't help. contest prelude. In fact, this section is one of the biggest trouble sections of the whole thing. So there's a few things to say here. First of all, hooks. Then these strums. And then this thing. So there's 3 things in this one section. For that, it's not too bad. So, as far as the hooks go, you would think tap. But I don't tap because there's an activation immediately after them. So instead, what I'm going to do is just ghost a note before them to make them easier. It actually only applies to the very first one. So right, and these things, you can see what I'm doing. I'm letting go completely and I'm using the first note of the 3 as a hammer on. So, and for some reason letting go and pressing back instead of just switching the frets makes that a lot more simple for me and less confusing. And then that. So the first 2 first. This. Now I thought that was fine, but basically all you do, you don't worry about ghosting notes between them if you do, because you can anchor below them anyway. And you just sort of just gotta go for it. I don't really know. Try and stay in second position as much as you can. So probably only switch to first position when you're hitting the green reds. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because, as I say, it just happens for me. And I don't know why anyone would struggle with it, but anyway, I'm not going to say too much about that, in lieu of sounding like a bit of a knob, so we'll move on. Next part now, there's some fast fretting before this, but I'm not going to talk about it because you just fret it. Now, C, D. So these little castles, I guess the OG term is. I definitely opted to tap these. I'm staying in first position. Maybe shifting up to second for the yellow bit. And these happen 3 times. So it's worth remembering that it happens 3 times. And right before the 3rd time is this stupid phrase where you definitely want to strum that 1 chord, because that's so awkward in one hand. So you want to be strumming that chord because it's a blue followed by the chord. So if by chance you're anchoring the 3 notes that are the chord already, which is a chance because naturally I slide up to do that, and you don't strum the chord, as you can see I just missed, and that's a phrase as well, before the most valuable act. So that strum, although it makes the transition into tapping a bit quicker, it's just so worth it for the consistency's sake. That was because of me just shifting the anchor too early. And this stuff here is a little bit awkward with the ladders, but as I say, it's just one handing, so I have nothing to add. Anchor shift, and then this time it's this instead of the trill bit. Okay, so immediately after this we have Shattered Illusion. I don't know what these section titles are honestly, but yeah, starts off with some trills, self-explanatory. Just standard tap them. They aren't really fast enough to be all taps. I say as I miss. I'm looking away, that's why I'm not on tempo. Don't make me eat my words, please. Right, so that one speeds up quite a bit actually. So it's what you just need to pay attention to how far in front of the beat lines. And of course, if you want to be overly cautious, you can alt tap and just over tap it. But anyway, at the end of the yellow blue trill, as I say, because of the path, I start one handing. So I'll just look at a measure and start one handing. Okay, I'm gonna set the position. So yeah, I'm one handing here, One hand the first couple of these, then start standard tapping, and all this is just the same thing but with anchor in red. Okay, so those two are fine pretty much. And then we get to that fast one. Different chord. I'm pretty sure I missed that before because I thought it was something else. So there's a random yellow blue in there after this one. So remember that's there. One hand that, then start this. And if you're doing this, or I guess if you don't like doing the between 1 and 2 on the tapping hand, you can literally straight alt tap it. But there's no use trying to be completely accurate on this bit. I don't think. It doesn't really matter. Because you definitely do not want to miss these notes. You don't want to miss any of these notes because it's under star power, but like these ones in particular, because it could lead into missing the star power phrase. And this is the most valuable part because it's the fastest note. And it goes without saying, but the chords can be treated as a trill because they are taps. Okay, so they're the trills and the chord trills. The section after is also worth talking about. Excuse me while I shift my leg position. So this is what I like to call a where the do I strum? So, or I guess where the hell do I strum? Or a WTF dis, which basically mean it's exactly what it says. Like where do I strum? Because it's a mixture of strums and taps and hammer-ons, and it's kind of hard to tell between the textures, and it's been a complaint about Clone Hero, especially when there's star power phrases in it. It's almost impossible to tell. But the key with this is just playing it a few times and you learn. It sort of alternates. There's a couple of times where you want to be strumming in the tap notes here. So these orange, so there's 2 strums and then 1 at the bottom on the green. One strum there for that double orange. And then after that, that's fine. There's like 4 times you want to be strumming in the taps. And that's it. Maybe this blue note here because it's an activation. And I'm going to press select because that's what you do to activate. So yeah, that blue note maybe, but the other ones are probably necessary strums. And that's the WTF this part. Now, after that, we can take a second and go to the acoustic solo, and much like earlier on, there's a hook here, I believe in this section. Or the one before. Right, it's in here, I think. So it's exactly the same as the hooks, which was the first thing I spoke about, except this time it's hammer-ons. And oh, for goodness sake, I just press the wrong button. It gives me a chance to speak, yeah. So instead of it being all taps, the hook starts with a strum, so it's way more, I guess, obvious where it is, even though it's kind of obvious where the first ones are as well. But yeah, you can't miss it, and as long as you remember it's there. Okay, I guess this is where it is. And you can do the same thing where you're already anchoring blue. It is pretty quick. I think it's quicker than the other two. So this is more, it's less of a challenge to hit the notes and more of a challenge to remember that there is something in this acoustic guitar solo that's missable. But it is kind of awkward. These kind of hooks, especially when they're really fast, are awkward. But yeah, remember the strums there, and pre-anchor blue, and this is okay. Maybe miss it 1 every 10 tries. And yeah, that's that. And then there's only one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the very last section, actually, the very end of this thing here. So this is just the stuff that's earlier on. Nothing too bad here. Then we get this bit of pretty fast fretting right here. So instead of tapping that, I opt for a slide method. So just slide down to the green after the, I guess, mini trills. And it probably, you could probably even ghost an entire quint there where the yellow note is. But that sort of makes the trills a bit more awkward. So that's awkward. Then we get the last section, which has the same trill as the bit before. So then you stop, and then I just tap those two notes. So I'll do that again. You have a larger break, so there's absolutely no problem transitioning into it. In fact, if you want to make it even more consistent, you can start tapping before this even comes up. Then the rest of that is basic on handling. And also I do this in first position, as opposed to the other ones I was like this. But doing that, you would need to slide down in this little fretting bit, which I find a bit more awkward. So doing it in first position, I can tap these two notes and I'm already in the right position, and I don't need to shift at all. Okay, that's Giselle. They are the main parts of the song, I would say. There are other things you could miss, I guess, but that's the main parts I developed things to get more consistent at, I guess you could say. But let's see it in action now, and I'll do a run. Okay, yes, that was Giselle, and yes, I was nervous for some reason. The song just, it really doesn't stop. It truly is, I don't know, one of the hardest ones to consistently perform well on, because it just throws so much at you. But anyway, 818k, the usual. I hope it was my best score, because I thought I thought it was better than that, but 818. So we are good on Giselle, and we can move on now to the strum songs, which start off with the Sentinel 110. So yeah, I'll see you there.